provide some important information to you as you draft your proposals for high-quality charter schools. And now for some introductions. Bruce, would you like to give a welcome?
Absolutely. And welcome to everybody that is at this inaugural support session. And I'm really excited to be here. I'm the Charter Portfolio Manager for the Charter Division. A little background real quickly. I've worked at the agency for almost a couple of years now. I was with the Texas Charter School Association prior to that, worked with a lot of new schools teams. So I certainly have had some great experiences with folks that are aspiring to open up a charter school. Prior to that, I was a charter superintendent, and then I worked in the ISD world for quite a number of years. So again, excited to be here with y'all.
Thank you, Bruce. We also have Natalie Elliott with us today. Natalie?
Hi, everyone. I'm a new schools coordinator. You may recognize me from the previously held mandatory info sessions. I am presenting again today on more detailed aspects of the application requirements.
Thank you. Unfortunately, John Garland couldn't be with us today. He has been dealing with a family emergency, but we hope to have him back for our next seminar. And I'm Joanne Wise, the new schools team manager. So glad that you could all join us today. Taking a look at the agenda, we will start with a presentation by Bruce, followed by a short Q&A, and then Natalie will present as well. As we were putting together our support seminars and researching data from previous cycles, we knew that the first topic was going to be very important and set the stage for all of the other seminars. We landed on two topics that are extremely important for applicants when applying for a new charter school: board formation and innovative school models. Bruce and Natalie are going to provide you with information on both of those topics today, but first, a little housekeeping. If you have any questions, please place them in the Q&A function for archival purposes. We will try to address them during the Q&A periods today, and we'll post all of them, addressed and not addressed, on the additional supports web pages. We'll address the ones we didn't get to today and post them on the web page. And then secondly, we are recording today's session and we'll also post it on the additional supports web page. So now, let's get started. Bruce, it's all yours.
Well, thanks, Joanne. All right, so we'll get our slides up here. And what I want to do today is really talk about governing for success. So essentially, it's just tips for building an effective board. So Natalie, if you get us back to that first slide here, and we'll get it going. And while Natalie's doing that, just want to tell you that I couldn't tell you in any stronger words than what Joanne mentioned, and how important board selection is, and essentially what it is that we want to do to help you understand really board selection, but also those traits that board members have that are essential to getting your school not only started, but then your school functioning in such a way that you will be able to, number one, get approved, but also to be successful. So again, governing for success, tips for building an effective board. So our agenda today, what we want to do is cover a few topics. First of all, why board member selection is crucial to a charter school's success. We're going to talk a little bit about personal integrity and the duties of care, loyalty, and obedience. Those are duties that board members really must be able to internalize and demonstrate in their functions as board members. The diversity advantage when building a board. We're going to talk about a couple of different types of diversity that are really important for board selection and board functioning. We're going to talk about other important board characteristics. And then finally, as Drew mentioned, we'll have a little bit of time for a Q&A at the end. All right, so again, why board member selection is crucial to a charter school success. So really kind of put forth about 4 or so reasons. So this first reason is really that board members promote the mission and vision of the charter school. So some of you in your roles today, perhaps you are aspiring to be the founding superintendent, maybe aspiring to be one of the founding board members. So again, there's different roles that folks have today. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today, I think, would be pretty transferable, but we definitely are focusing on board member selection. So board members develop, they promote and evaluate the mission and the vision of the school. How do they do that? Well, first, they're able to clearly communicate the school's vision, goals, and directions to students, staff, parents, and the community. So one of the things that I always remind folks is, do you have that 30-second elevator speech ready? Can you really describe your mission and vision of your charter school in about 30 seconds or less to a parent that's interested perhaps in sending their child to your school, or perhaps to a funder or somebody that might be interested in supporting the school financially and as things start up? And certainly to community folks that you want to get involved and you want their support, so that there's going to be a perceived need for your school in the community. So again, board members have to be able to do that. So that's internalizing that mission. Again, now you may be a founding board member that's helping to develop that mission and that vision. That's great. So you should have that internalized. You should be able to very clearly communicate that to anyone that asks. And then also board members ensure that the programs and activities of the school are in alignment with the school's mission and vision. So as the school moves forward and the school starts its operation, one of the really important duties of board members is you're kind of the keeper of the mission and vision. You're watching, you're ensuring that mission and vision is embodied in all the programs, all the activities, all the things that the school does. Of course, you're going to be teaching the teats, and you're going to help kids to learn to do math and to be great readers and writers and to understand history and to have all those scientific applications that are going to make them fantastic students of the 21st century. But is your mission and vision embodied in all those activities? That's one of your jobs as a board members, and that's a really important function that board members have. So again, board members promote the mission and vision of the school. So board members set performance expectations as well. So board members really hold themselves responsible for overall school performance. How do they do that? Well, number one, as we said in the title here, that they set goals for academic, financial, and operational performance. And again, board members hire the chief administrative officer or the CEO or the superintendent or the head of the school. We have lots of different names for that person in the charter world, but that administrative officer looks to the board for that direction and guidance. And that chief administrative officer's job is to implement those goals for academics and finance and operations. So again, board members develop those. Now you're going to develop those in conjunction with your superintendent, with your chief administrative officer, and along with community and parents and all sorts of other important parties that are part of your school. But again, board members really they develop those goals, and then they're the keeper of those goals. So board members also, what do? Of course, they hire that chief administrative officer to implement those goals. And again, as we used to say in East Texas, if you're going to do the hiring, you got to be ready to do the firing as well. So what I'm trying to say is you have to be ready to hold that leader accountable as a board member. Some of you may be aspiring superintendents, and you're looking for board members right now, and you're trying to figure out board member selection. One of the questions that you need to ask that aspiring board member, if you're the superintendent, is, would you be willing to fire me if I'm not holding the school's goals and fulfilling the school's goals as you set forth as a board member? You need to ask that question. Would you be willing to hold me accountable? Because if that person isn't willing to hold the superintendent accountable, they're probably not the person that you need to have as a board member. So again, board members also establish goal progress measures. So those are linked to those goals, and then a process to evaluate progress on a periodic basis. So board members really dig into the data. They really focus on all those measures that really determine whether or not goals are being met. And then finally, board members provide resources to assist in the completion of those goals. If you're going to set goals, then you're going to have to provide the resources for those goals to be accomplished. So again, board members set performance expectations. Board members hold the superintendent accountable. So we've alluded to this in the previous slide. So board members, they hire the school leader, and then they hold that school leader accountable for the successful implementation of the school's mission and vision. So how do they do that? Well, again, they provide resources to ensure the efficient and effective operation of the school. So again, board members have to know how to look at a budget. Now, you may not be the financial expert on the board, but somebody on that board needs to have a background in finances, and all board members need to have a basic understanding of budgets and a basic understanding of how the school is funded and then how money is spent, so that all those resources and all those tools that teachers need and that the school needs to be effective in what they do, board members need to understand how all that works. And then board members also allow the leader to manage those resources to accomplish the performance goals of the school. So again, board members, you're the keeper of the mission and vision, and you're the one that's developing and keeping those goals, those financial, those academic, those operational goals. But then you're hiring folks to implement and manage those goals and those resources to accomplish those performance objectives of the school. So again, your job is not to micromanage. Your job is simply to make sure that you're managing those resources. Ellie, you want to go back to the previous slide? And then also the third thing there is that the board holds the leader accountable to ensure that the mission and vision are implemented successfully as measured by the performance goals. So again, board members have to look at data, they have to understand data, and they have to be able to interpret that data so that they can determine whether or not performance goals are being met. All right, and then board members seek input and advice. One of the most important things that board members can do is listen. And they listen to parents, they listen to staff, they listen to the charter community as a whole, and then they act on the input, the concerns, the feedback that they get. And how do they do that? Well, one of the things is that they establish board committees to advise the board so that decisions are based on high quality, relevant information. Board committees are absolutely an invaluable tool for schools to have and for charter schools to have. Why? Because board members need to be experts, but a lot of times there's folks out there that are super experts on finance or on academics or operations, or maybe some finite areas like real estate or personnel selection, those kind of things. And so in that case, board committees can help to advise the board on how all of these things should work and what some good decisions should be made. Now, boards ultimately have those final decisions in regards to the actions that they take in regards to academics and finances operations. But board committees can advise and really be helpful in that regard. And then, of course, board members seek feedback through other processes such as surveys, open forums. Like I say, board members listen. You can listen kind of qualitatively. You can listen quantitatively as well. But again, board members need to listen and seek that input and advice to help make their school and the performance even stronger than it is. All right, so I want to spend just a moment and talk about personal integrity and 3 duties that we like to call the duties of care, loyalty, and obedience. So the first duty, the duty of care, essentially requires board members to be with it. board members need to be able and be aware of what's going on. Well, how can, they make informed decisions unless they study their board packet and their board materials, unless they're actively participating in meetings, unless they're talking to parents, unless they're looking at data. All those things are important. So when we say duty of care, think of it this way. You care as a board member about the performance and the mission and the vision of the school. So that's that duty of care. You're an active, involved board member. You show up to meetings, you participate in other events. Again, if you're in it to think you're going to get a big salary as a board member, hate to disappoint you, but this is one of those most invaluable free positions that you're ever going to be able to participate in life. So again, it's an important responsibility. It takes a lot of time. So board members need to be willing to give up the time it takes to uphold that duty of care, to be active, to be involved, and to do all those things that board members need to do. The duty of loyalty is simply that you're loyal to your students. I mean, essentially, that's who you're loyal to. So you're not loyal to your own interests. You're not loyal to certain transactions or certain things are going to happen that's going to provide you some sort of personal financial gain or some sort of advantage, whatever it is. Your loyalty is ultimately to the students and to ensuring that the mission and vision of the school is upheld. So again, you care about doing your job and you're loyal to the students. And then finally, that last duty is the duty of obedience. So what's the duty of obedience? What are you obeying? Well, you're obeying federal law, state law, any local statutes, and your charter contract. So you have really 4 areas that you need to consider: state law, federal law, local laws, and your charter contract. So again, you're obedient in regards to decisions that you make. And it's just the idea that you uphold everything that you're supposed to, that you make the correct decisions so that you're not going to get yourselves or the school in trouble later on by making a decision that's not informed by some sort of statute or rule or simply your charter contract that's approved by the state. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the diversity advantage of building a board and when you're building a board. So there's 2 types of diversity that I really want to talk about. And the first one is professional diversity. Individual board members need to have personal and professional experiences and training that provide a really rich and deep array of skills that'll benefit the school. So you can see those areas that we've listed. You're not going to be able to necessarily capture all those skills, in all your members, but think about these areas that are really important knowledge points for board members. Expertise in finance, education, law, service professions, real estate, human resources, medical professions, industry-based professions. These are all areas that will benefit and make the school stronger because the decisions that you make are often going to be informed by your own experiences, by your own skill set as a board member. And so again, goes without saying, you certainly want to have some education experts on the board, but you want to have some financial experts as well. Somebody that understands the law, maybe a lawyer, maybe someone that has had training in some sort of legal related field. And then you can see all of those different types of professions. You don't want to have just a bunch of educators on a board. You don't want to have a bunch of lawyers. You want to have that rich array, that mixture, that diversity that's going to really strengthen your board and help your board to make those great decisions. And then the second type of diversity that we're going to talk about is really personal and representational diversity. So board membership should reflect a broad spectrum of personal characteristics that really complement the diversity of the school and reflect the students in the community that they serve. a real simple way to put it is when we think about representational diversity is the board should look somewhat like the students that they serve. So if your charter school is located in a community that has a large Hispanic population, you certainly would like to have some board members on your board that would represent that same community. Again, we can think about that in terms of demographics. We can also think about it in terms of folks that are invested in the community, folks that work in the community, that worship in the community, that serve certain roles in the community. Those folks absolutely are part of that personal diversity that's important for the board. So you can see the other things in regards to gender and race. You want to have a diversity of genders. You want to have a diversity of race. You want to have a diversity of age. You don't want to have everybody that's, maybe all, 30 years old. And you don't want to have everybody that's all 70 years old. You want to have a nice diversity just simply because that's going to bring in more diverse viewpoints and just a different array of thoughts that's really going to challenge and I think make your board more effective. Education and training. You don't want to have a whole group of PhDs. I think you certainly want to have a mixture of folks with a wide variety of educational experiences, degrees, folks that don't have a degree, that are successful in their profession, that not necessarily have gone to college or have a degree. A diversity of income, and we say home addresses, and that's just simply the idea that you want to have folks on your board that certainly majority of would live within that area that your charter school is going to serve. And then if there's other folks, you don't want to have a preponderance of addresses that are outside of that geographic area. Right. And then this last section here, other important board member characteristics. So just a couple of things to think about here. So first is the ability to communicate effectively to staff, parents, and students. So whenever you're thinking about board member selection, you really want to focus on someone that has the ability to communicate. Now, there's different ways to communicate. Some folks are great writers, some folks are great speakers, some folks just have that gift of interpersonal communication. So again, you want to look at some skill sets in regards to communication when considering board selection. And then a willingness to grow professionally and become a knowledgeable board member. This is so important because board membership and serving on a board is really not kind of a one-off thing or well, I'll do this a little bit. It's a full term and it's a long term and it's all hands-on commitment. And with that, you want someone that's willing to grow in their knowledge of the school. Certainly, a lot of board members that you talk to, maybe, or potential board members, maybe they don't know anything about charter schools, but they're excited about education and they're excited about kids and they're excited about the opportunities that a new school would present. Those are the folks that you want to talk to and consider seriously being part of your board. And it's that willingness, again, to grow, to learn, to serve actively. And then finally, another important trait of board members is the desire for personal accountability for the overall success of the school and the accomplishment of its mission and vision. Are these folks that you're considering for the board, are these folks that can hold themselves accountable? Are they folks that are going to work hard? Are there folks that are definitely going to be able to accurately and succinctly explain what the school is about? Are there folks that are going to be willing to look at data and hold people accountable for meeting performance goals? Again, all of these things combined really, I think, can give you a pretty good picture of who it is that you may want to consider for selecting as a board member. Right. Well, I tried to be true to our time here, so we definitely have a little bit of time for some questions and feedback.
You did
So-
a great job, Bruce. Thank you. We do have a question for you in the
Sure.
Q&A. The superintendent is a confusing role.
Mhm.
How is it different from a board member or principal? Is the
That's a-
superintendent a paid position?
It's a great question. Yes, the superintendent is, I would say 100% of the time, a paid position. So the superintendent is really the chief administrative officer that is hired by the board to implement and manage all the functions of the school. And then the superintendent then hires folks to help him or her implement that mission and vision. And so those folks might be a business manager, might be some office staff, back office staff, and then certainly teachers and other paraprofessionals. All those folks that clean the school and take care of things around the school. Now, one of the things to remember is that there is one superintendent and one, just one person, that whatever you want to call them. And I've tried to use a lot of different terms that we talk about in the charter community, because some schools don't call their chief administrative officer a superintendent. Some call them a CEO. Some call them a head of school. And some schools, some charter schools even just call them the principal. So again, what that person is, though, they're the one person that reports directly to the board, that the board holds accountable for the operation of the school. So that's a really good question, and it's a good clarification, because again, sometimes those terms can be confusing. I'll give you a little personal experience. So when I was a charter superintendent, for a little while, I wore about 4 hats. So I was the superintendent of the school. I was also the elementary principal. I was also the HR manager, and I was also the business manager, because we were a small school. And when I got there, we had about 300 kids. And so I had to wear a lot of hats. Now, as the school grew, I got to take off the principal hat, and I got to take off the business manager hat and the personnel, the HR manager hat, simply because we had enough schools that we had a little more revenue where we could support some additional positions. But oftentimes with a brand new charter, that superintendent is going to need to wear some multiple hats. But again, they're that one person hired by the board, and the board does hire the person. Remember, they hire and fire that person. Hopefully they won't fire them, but they hold that person accountable. And that's that one person that the board hires and supervises.
Great answer. Thank you. I don't see any more questions at the moment. So I guess we'll move on into Natalie's presentation. But if you do have questions for Bruce, did you want to hang along with us until the
Yes,
end of the
I
session?
plan to. I'd love to do that.
Great. Okay. Go ahead and put them in the Q&A function, and we will address them at the very end. Oh, here's another one. Can a new charter school also hire a principal?
Absolutely. So again, and I pardon you, there's evidently a storm going on outside here. So if you're hearing a little thunder, yes. So if you have determined that you will be able to have that position in your budget and can afford that person, absolutely. And I will tell you, ideally, that would be a preference if you could, because the principal, what you want to do is you want to have somebody that's really keeping eyes and ears on what's happening instructionally. Now, there's lots of other things that happen in the school in regards to student management and culture and all those kind of things, but you got to have somebody that's going to keep their eyes on what's happening in the classroom. And generally, that's the principal. Now, superintendent can do that if they're wearing those multiple hats like I was describing before, but it's really hard to do. And the other thing is the superintendent has lots of things that they have to do. And one of those things is to work with the board and to help manage everything that the board's doing. So again, Can you hire a principal? Absolutely. Should you? Preferentially, yes. But again, it's got to be in your budget. So you're going to have to look at your numbers, figure out that in your student enrollment and see if that's a position that you can afford initially.
I think we have time to address this next question, Bruce.
Sure.
What documentation is needed if the board members have changed since filing with the state? Do we need to submit an amendment?
No. So great question. So the way that we track board member changes in the charter division, we actually have an email box that's called Charter Governance. So it's literally Charter Governance, those two words, at tea.texas.gov. So if there is a change in governance during the year, folks will email that change. Now, we also have a form called the Governance Reporting Form that we open up that window in October. And so between October 1 and December 1, that's our reporting window that you go through an application in what's called TEAL, which is the Texas Education Agency, kind of a secure environment, where you report who is on your board. So each board member and then each charter officer, and that includes principals and assistant principals, they report their information and basically, who they are, where they live, if they receive any compensation, and then board members also report if there's any conflicts of interest, and also if they have achieved their training hours that are required by the state. So again, a way, October 1st, December 1st, that everybody does annually, and then throughout the year, you can report those to our charter governance inbox.
Bruce, I think there was a miscommunication. That was for approved and authorized schools. She's talking about during the application process.
Oh,
And yes, if your board members have changed since you filed with the Secretary of State, I believe that you do need to do amendment with the Secretary of State, but we will address that in the Q&A and we'll post it. And now we are going to move into Natalie's presentation. Bruce, thank you so much. And stick around, please. All right, thank you.
All right. For our next topic in today's webinar, we are going to discuss innovative charter programs, which is, as you will see and probably have seen if you've opened up the application, quite a talking point in your school design development. So as you may be aware, Section 12 of the Texas Education Code specifically evokes the term innovative program when it comes to establishing a charter school and helping students achieve higher academically. And so we have embedded this definition in the resource page of the Generation 27 application, specifically in the school design, mission, vision, and design elements section. So when we use the phrase innovative program, it really doesn't just mean completely cutting edge and built from the ground up, though it can mean that. So that addresses here bullet point 1, wholly original. Of course, an innovative program might be wholly original. However, it may also be making a slight, perhaps significant or slight improvement upon a successful innovation that's already offered or been offered for consistently for years in the field. So you don't have to think about innovation as a complete revolution in education. It can mean that. It can mean a slight innovation. It can also mean a program that may already exist within the proposed community, but is implemented differently or more effectively than what is currently seen in the area proposed. So we just wanted to make sure that you understood that there are a few different ways to define what innovative means for our purposes. We also have this helpful guiding question included in that resource page as well. You'll note on the resource page that we offer a few examples of what have traditionally or more recently been considered innovative programs or innovative school design models. However, I want to take a moment and highlight that in no way are we saying you have to have a program based on one of those existing designs. Moreover, none of those programs is considered better or more favorable than any other. So please don't think that those are models that you must include in your school design. In fact, we want to sort of discourage that. We just wanted to definitely provide sort of a definition by example when we say school design or innovative design, what we mean. What I think is a more helpful resource included in that same section on that embedded resource page is this three-pronged question, okay? You should be able to answer in your educational design proposal how your educational design is different from what's currently offered within the proposed geographic boundary, how it's tailored to the needs of all student groups served. So again, this highlights an awareness, a keen awareness of the geographic boundary and the needs of the community, and beneficial to all students who might be impacted upon completion of the program. So you want to be thinking about all of these aspects and how they lend themselves to innovation rather than a completely revolutionary or everything plus the kitchen sink type of educational model. Okay, if you're a returning applicant, or if you have started to dig into this process or are familiar with the charter authorization process in Texas, then you may be aware that State Board of Education members who are integrally involved in the charter application and charter approval process often have feedback about this very thing, the idea of the innovative model. And there's an important caveat that you should know as well if you are less familiar. A lot of what have recently been considered innovative developments in educational design are now available through various state programs to traditional ISDs. So a lot of the things that had been maybe started or field tested through the charter community are now developed wholesale all over in all types of programs. And this is wonderful, right? This is benefiting all of the students of Texas. However, State Board of Education members, in their duty to represent the concerns of their constituents, often ask how your progressive or innovative educational model is different from the innovations that are currently housed in traditional ISDs, especially in the proposed area. They also ask, how is the program different from nearby charter schools? So if you are proposing a more charter saturated area, what is it that your charter school is going to offer that puts a new spin or adds a new level of innovation to what is already offered by the traditional ISDs and by the neighboring charter schools? And then additionally, an important question to think about that is often asked by SBOE members is how are you going to make sure that your program is not in direct competition with the already existing surrounding schools? So bearing those questions in mind, you might be wondering, where do I start as I am developing this model? Well, remember, you always want to have evidence, specific evidence that determines the strength of your program. This can be research-based evidence. This could be your personal experience as an innovative educational leader in a different school program. This may be something that you are trying to field test, but you have enough of experiential knowledge or research-based information to support that it would be successful. Again, we can't stress enough throughout the application process that you really want to pay close attention to the evaluation criteria for this section, because it too asks about the level of evidence that shows that this program will be successful with the geographic population, the geographic boundaries and the student population that you're hoping to target and serve in having this program. Remember that you really want to go ahead and research what programs already exist in your targeted area. And this includes both traditional ISDs who are doing very interesting and innovative things and nearby charters. And the best evidence that you can offer is spending time in authentic dialogue with members of the community to determine interest and need. Because even if you do have those other innovative programs being offered at nearby schools, if there's still a community demand that is not met, then that will be very authentic and important information to include in your application as well. So here are some resources on this slide for you to look to when you start to research common concerns and questions that are often flagged about innovative programs. We always encourage applicants to review previous application cycle submissions, especially, of course, ones that were successful, though sometimes you can learn just as much from looking at applications that were less successful. But the schools that have been authorized recently, sometimes they indicate trends in charter schools that are looked upon or were looked upon favorably in their own application cycle. But you want to remember that a holistic approach to research is what's going to serve you best, because even though there may have been a recent trend in certain educational models that were approved in certain communities, you still want to make sure that there's a need for those programs. You don't want to just replicate wholesale something that may already be offered. That's really what we're trying to drive home here about having a really unique and program to offer students in the area. In order to find previously submitted applications, you can find them all on the portfolio webpage where they're searchable by generation. So you can look at the more recent authorized schools. Just keep that caveat in mind that just because these applications were looked on favorably or these school models were looked on favorably doesn't necessarily mean that there's still a need. That burden is still on you as the applicant to determine through your community engagement practices. And then we always encourage applicants to watch meetings that State Board of Education members participate in. Most significantly, the capacity interviews, which are for applicants who move past the external evaluation phase, and then are interviewed by State Board members and TEA staff. Please note that TEA staff do review the applications and pose those questions as part of the capacity interviews, but a lot of those concerns are echoed in the external review to begin with. And from there, State Board of Education members also tend to have fairly similar concerns that are brought up through that external review process. At this point in time, when those applicants are in the capacity interviews, they have already seen their external review data and the comments from those reviewers. So they're aware of these. They're aware of these concerns, but it's just good for you to see as the applicant what types of questions you would have to field, and you may want to go ahead and address in your application proposal. And then finally, you may be familiar with the fact that after the commissioner proposes awards, they then go to the State Board of Education for the option to take action or take no action or to veto those proposals. Sometimes at those meetings, State Board of Education members raise concerns that they have previously raised in capacity interviews or elsewhere. Sometimes they've heard from constituents and they have new concerns that they would like to share. So that's an important stage of the application process as well, when you're looking to design a program that really offers something unique and that is community driven. Those can be good resources to look to find out what is the feedback that we typically hear from State Board members in these conversations. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to point out very quickly that I just talked a whole lot about those meetings, but where can you find them? They're all archived on the Admin Monitor webpage, which is linked here in this slide deck, and you can stream them at your leisure. They have the last several cycles of capacity interviews and state board meetings there. Now we have some time for questions, and please know we can't really offer more specific competitive advice than we already have, but we are happy to clarify things that have been addressed in these presentations, or anything that you have noticed in the application that pertains to the idea of effective governance, recruiting, and our innovative models.
Thank you, Natalie. Bruce, we have a question for you, if you're with us.
I am.
Question is, how should the board approach its role in fundraising? Should there be expectations for personal giving?
That's a great question. And really, there are different preferences amongst charters. And it is typically I would say, an expectation that board members would somehow support the school with some sort of resources. Now, that may be financial giving, for example, the simplest way. But there are also other ways that board members can support the school. For example, board members that own a business in the community can offer apprenticeships to students that are, in programs in the charter that would benefit from such an apprenticeship. Also, there are board members that will do some in-kind type services. And I'll give you an example again from my own experience. I had a retired fire marshal that was on my board. So, and he was also a registered building inspector. I mean, this guy knew everything about facilities. And so honestly, I saved a lot of money from having him essentially be an unpaid consultant when we built a new building. He consulted on all about the fire code things that we needed and the fire rated doors and all that kind of stuff, things that I knew nothing about, but he was an expert in. That probably saved us $10,000 just from not having to hire a consultant to work with the architect to do all these kind of things. So yes, I think that should be an expectation. Should that be a deal breaker in regards to board selection and board membership? I don't think it should be, but I really think that it's something that should be considered very carefully, and really would be a preference if board members contributed some way, either directly or in kind type of donation.
Thank you, Bruce. We have another question that I'd like to answer. The question is, among the approved charters in recent years, are there some that stand out as especially exemplary in some aspect of their application or interview? Unfortunately, we cannot answer that question, but I would really guide you to look at the posted applications of those that were approved, and also the capacity interviews. In my mind, the answer is yes, certainly. There are certain interviews and applications that have been especially well done and exemplary. However, we're not able to share that with you. We still have about 10 minutes left. If you would like to place some more questions in the Q&A function. Again, let me state that we will be posting the recording from today's session, both presentations and the Q&A document in the sessions button. If you click on that session before, it took you to registration. When we post the documents, it's going to take you straight to all of the presentations and recordings and such from today. It'll take us a few days to get that done. We're still working on the information session documents to post, so give us a few days to get that done. Bruce or Natalie, do you have anything to add while we wait and see if any other questions are going to come in?
Just real quickly, one thing that I did want to mention, because I know, especially when I was working with applicants in a previous role, is where do you find board members? And so one of the things I would encourage prospective charters and founding teams to do is really scour the community in which you're planning to put your charter. So where do you look in that community? You look at businesses. Well, how do you do that? Well, you get involved in the Chamber of Commerce and in Rotary and in different functions that kind of support and are ancillary to the business community. Churches and different houses of worship are certainly places to look, because a lot of times community leaders are part of maybe that specific part of the community. Also, just businesses themselves and the connections that you might have with leaders in those businesses. Those are great connections as well. I would also just spend a little time as you do maybe some meet and greets and some things like that, and see if there are folks that are interested to connect with your mission and vision, that really connect with your ideas. A lot of times that's a good place as well. So the answer is look everywhere, but certainly there are some pretty strategic ways, I think, that you can possibly find some great quality board members.
Thank you, Bruce. Natalie, there's a question that you might want to address. I think it deals with your presentation topic. For a proposed charter to successfully avoid competition with existing public schools, is that reflected in the statements of impact, or are there other factors that go into it?
This is a good question. Well, I would say that as a baseline, yes, it's reflected in the statements of impact. But as I hope that the presentation indicated, you can't really look to any one source for that information. I mentioned the idea of holistic research and a holistic approach to it. The feedback you get from the statement of impact is valuable. However, it is on you and your team to go and look at how these programs are functioning in their community. What is the general reception? Do students enjoy them? Are they well supported? Have they led to academic success or any type of improvement or rigor within those school systems and those school settings? And that's just one other aspect. Again, you would want to turn to the community and the community members. They may have a beautiful, amazing school with lots of bells and whistles, but it's still overlooking this one niche area that a school of choice could potentially fit. So yes, a statement of impact is important feedback for the applicant to hear. However, it should not be the only place where you're doing that research to look to determine need and the community drive behind what types of programs are doing well and what could appear to meet something that isn't yet addressed. And I do want to say, as a quick caveat, we are not trying to quash innovation at all. The fact that charters get to have flexibility in so many areas is definitely their superpower. However, they've done such a good job of it that a lot of those really wonderful research-based programs have been exported and available to more students in all types of educational settings. And again, that's wonderful. That benefits all students. That's all that matters. So we don't want the applicants to think, oh, we have to do something that's already safe and tested. And we don't want you to think, oh, they're telling me to only be safe. If you have, really innovative ideas that are based on your research and you can connect that to a community need and there's a demand, that's what we're looking for.
Thank you. We have about 4 minutes left, time for a couple more questions if you'd like to place them in the Q&A function. We'll give you a few more minutes. Well, I don't see any more questions, so I guess we're going to close out today's session just a few minutes early. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us and presenting that excellent presentation on governance. And Natalie, thank you for your presentation as well. Thank all of the audience members for being here, and we really appreciate you, and we hope to see you next Tuesday. Natalie, what's the date? Do you recall?
Yes, it's October 19th, and that one will be information packed. So it will be a lot to get, not that this was sparing in terms of information, but next week will be a lot. So definitely encourage you to register and hold on to your hats and bring your notepads, because we're going to have a lot.
Thank you. And with that, we hope to see you next week. Have a great evening, and everyone be safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.